Okay, looks like this part of the book is the machines. Chapter 7 Zero Flimsy Killer. A Japanese observation with right and removability provide closely for Mitsubishi's masterpiece. Few weapons of World War II have gained more fame for doing rally than the Mitsubishi Zero, which the space of just a few years a Japanese Zero fighter fell from nearly invincible status to being an easy kill for most American pilots with the proper experience. The story of how this change of formage about it among the most fascinating of World War II. Fortune came about is among the most fascinating of World War II. The Zero Saga began on May 19, 1937 when the Imperial Japanese Navy tested requirements for a new shipboard fighter with a speed of at least 310 miles per hour at armament of two cannons and two machine guns and experienced range, climb, and maneuverability that many land-based fighters of that era had not approached performance to standards of only Mitsubishi accepted the challenge. Under direct chief engineer Zero Perturasi, the prototype flew April 1st, 1939, following the installation of more powerful 14-cylinder Nakajaki NK-1C Psych-12 radical engine and was forced the new fighter extended the requirements that had been considered only a few months before. In order to attain maximum range and agility, Gokuraiki used a complex single-unit wing ensemble designed for low wing loading covered with a newly developed lightweight metal contrary to Rosewood. I don't believe that persists to this day. No wood was used in the Zero construction. The finished product was in many ways a technological masterpiece. It boosted sponsorship climb rate and mobility, addition to 1,930-mile maximum range that was nearly three times of the current Western designs. It was the first shipboard fighter and clearly outperformed its land-based rivals, and the total factors would permit the limit's performance and not become evident for several years. In order to test new weapons under operational conditions, the Japanese Navy committed several pre-production Zeros to China in the summer of 1940, which, as the Germans had done with the Bf-109 in the Spanish Civil War, nearly 5 years before, the new fighter promptly wiped out all the defending Chinese fighters during its first combat use in August. The Inter set the tone for the next few months since the new machines, after design A6M1s, simply into opposition and more than a year of operation use, over 100 Chinese fighters were shot down with the loss without a loss of a single Zero. This started the Zero legend. General Charlie Churchill, later to gain fame as the leader of the Flying Tigers, attempted to warn U.S. Army Air Corps of the Zero threat, but the warnings were failed and ignored. As a result, Mitsubishis that swarmed over Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, came as a complete surprise to American forces. Despite the fact that the aircraft had been in combat for nearly a year and a half and had been seen by dozens of foreign observers, Americans did not seem ready to accept the fact that Japan could produce an airplane of such impressive performance over China. The Zeros faced Russian-built Provorov I-15s and I-16 fighters, in addition to wide assortment of other airplanes from around the world. All had the thing in common: they were inferior to the Mitsubishi product in every respect. In open stages of the war in the Pacific, the Zero faced more modern opposition ranging from the already obsolete Republic Sovietsky P-35 to the outstanding Supermarine Spitfire. The variants of these Allied machines still varied rarely, but all were inferior to Japan's A-6M and low speed, close quarter combat. And with a few exceptions, Allied pilots allow themselves to be drawn into twisting, torn dogfights with the Japanese that played directly to the Zero strengths, since Japanese Imperial Navy pilots were exhaustively trained in aerobatics, while the Zero lightweight, low wing load made it ideal for dogfights. The end result were downed American, British, Commonwealth, and Dutch aircraft and a Japanese swept across the Pacific. So rapid and conflated with these victories, the Zero soon gained a reputation for invincibility. That new weapon perhaps reached its zenith during the Java East Indies campaign of February 1942, when Allied air units were simply wiped out. Geography reckoned that his number 453 Royal Australian Air Force Squadron lost 11 of its 13 booster Buffaloes to Zeros, and the first combat with number 12 Squadron was wiped out to a man where allies where we had in the Buffalo, barreled with the Zero could outfly, outgun, outmaneuver, and out almost everything else that was in the book for a fighter plane. No one yet knew what the Zeros were, but they were not slow, ancient fabric-covered biplanes. The problem faced by the Allies were that obsolete aircraft such as the Buffalo P-35 and P-36 had little chance against the Zero. Like the aircraft used earlier in China, they could not fly high enough nor gain enough speed to take advantage of the Zero performance at high speeds, but the Allies learned that better aircraft were equally efficient through the proper tactics. We were not used over Darwin, Australia. Zero shot down 11 of 12 defending Curtiss P-40 Warhawks. Even the Spitfire, considered by some to be the best fighter of the war, lost 17 and 27 to the imagining Zeros. When the Australian pilots tried to dogfight with the Japanese, it was simply a matter of tactics. Observed, the RAAF Royal Australian Air Force pilots were trained in tactics that were excellent against German and Italian equipment, but suicide against the aerobatic Japanese, such as Flying Tigers, outfitting from Burma and China, the Zero's vulnerability to fast diving and roll tactics. In a single combat, Flying Tiger P-40 ripped into a Japanese formation and destroyed 17 fighters and bombers without a loss. While many Tiger's actions were against Japanese Army aircraft rather than Navy Zeros, the point is irrelevant, because combat after combat revealed that Zeros could be defeated and their weaknesses were exposed. Over New Guinea, the Imperial Japanese Navy cracked Li Wang encountered the Bell P-39 Acrobra, flown by the U.S. Army. To be sure, the P-39 was a modern fighter, but it had been designed for a close support tactical role rather than air superiority. Missions The mid-engine plane weighed twice as much as a Zero, yet had a low-altitude rating engine of only a single more power. It should be no surprise that this heavy machine did not fare well against the agile Zero. Yet Serbo Sakai, the Japanese Navy led surviving ace, hit an 8th Fighter Group P-39 destroyed a bomber after diving at great speed. No one could move in time to disrupt the attack. It rolled over beyond our range, Sakai recorded. In theory, few aircraft showed have been less qualified to take on the Zero than the Grumman F-4F Wildcat. The squat bulldog-like F-4F was several years older in design than the Zero, but like most American fighters, it was rugged and heavily armored. Most importantly, Marine and Navy pilots did not allow the Zeros to distract the team's arms of combat. James Blakely, commander of the carrier Yorktown Wildcats during the Midway engagement, stressed that the proper way to take the Zero was to dive at full throttle and attain speed, no matter what the enemy did. Sooner or later, they had to take you on your terms, Presley said. If you should be jumped from behind, they had decided followed tactically when you rolled at high speed. Using similar tactics, Wildcats were wiped out Sakai Lane Wang in the fall of 1942 and gradually where many of the Japanese Navy ace pilots were shot down and killed by American pilots such as Joe Ross, Martin Carl, and John L. Smith. Their question was come to mind: how could a simple change in tactics capable Wildcat to defeat the supporting vehicle Zero only a few short months after everything the Allies could face uh, against it? At least part of the answer is the Zero's invisibility was an illusion. The Mitsubishi formidable position was forged in China in the early months of the war, where the quality of its operation was poor. The machine itself, poorly trained or experienced pilots with obsolete aircraft and poor taxes based on an Allied subcontinent or China. L3 pre-war Japanese naval training was possible the most rigorous in the world. As Sakai noted that his book Samurai, in contrast, some wild Zeros had barely learned the rudiments of flying, much less than the skills needed to beat the Japanese during an aerial melee with Zeros. On September 13, 1943, Chinese pilots startled the Japanese by bailing out before joining combat. Two others flying Russian-built fixed-gear I-15 biplane fighters collided with each other and smashed into a mountain. Where this was an extreme case, few of the Allied pilots, in addition, they faced the crushing handicap of discouraging and confusion about by the Japanese onslaught even before what's at the Guadalcanal saying the Americans also forces that have Zero was forced in the Altoon Islands in June 1942. U.S. Navy technicians learned that the Zero enjoyed manifest 180 miles per hour and immovable at 230 miles per hour. A few Americans, such as like Colonel felt that Zeros could not withstand the firepower of American fighters. Hits that were shattered off a P-40 resulted in a down Zero, and most Zero pilot difficult that the A-6M could absorb that the Zeros performed many such as the 400 horsepower per hour Northrop F-4U Corsair and Lockheed P-38 Lightning. American pilots could break off into combat at will. A 1936 vintage aircraft like the Spitfire and ME-109 could be upgraded to performance levels. They were on a par with more modern aircraft throughout the war. Zero practically staggered between modes to performance. This was practically involved with Japanese Mineral. Mitsubishi's barely seen for the A6M5s, but a small performance of the Nakaraku NK-1F and Sector 21. Only 200 horsepower getting through the entire Zero developments. Near the coast of the water, Mitsubishi experimented 1,500 horsepower Mitsubishi MK8P Category 62 engine. The resulting machine, the A6M8, was a great improvement over earlier Zeros, but its top speed was still only 367 miles per hour. Grumman, meanwhile, had hiked the performance of its Hellcat from 306 to 420 miles per hour in the F6F to 6 model, with the addition of the little more than modified engine and four-blade propeller, but the U.S. Navy did not bother to adopt the exemption of F6F-6. The U.S. Navy did not bother attempting the Navy of production of A6M5 version of the Zero had hard-pressed related model. Wildcat, such as the Hellcat, Corsair, F-8F, Bearcat, and both Army Air Force fighters, in an account the war design Aykroyd declined to shoulder all the blame for Zero shortcomings, and said that some Air Force and the staff and the Imperial Navy, including mobility production. These changes were early Zero turned Roman's range engine. It lacked the inherent version of Thomas G. Miller, who postulated that the Japanese air tactics never evolved beyond World War I style dogfighting. They could not cope well with adversaries who declined to fight them on their own terms. Unfortunately for Japan, the Zero was the metal result that strategy. That's the end of chapter 7. Hope if you see, I think the veterans who fought in World War II, so I could read these books. And if you see a veteran that looks sad, maybe they need a friend, have a tea or a coffee with them, or maybe just sit down and drink water or whatever, or have a soft drink. Well, that's the ending of chapter 7 of 11 Days of Remembrance videos. Thank you to the veterans.